Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me today are Jeff Ranke and Andy Zoll. We're the editors of Manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News, Food Manufacturing, and Industrial Distribution, and we each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they might have on the industry moving forward. But before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use, even a thumbs up on YouTube. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, Andy, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We're also live every Thursday at 2 p.m., so make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine to get a notification whenever we go live. Like this week, Andy, when it's a bonus week, bonus panelist, second one of the week. You know, it's just a great week to be an IN Magazine subscriber.
It is. Feel great about it.
How you doing?
Good. Nice to see you guys in person, doing the home office thing a lot, so feeling a little squirrely. We'll see how it goes.
It is. It's like, I always like how there has to be like a reintegration to like the office.
Probably shouldn't have come in and jumped right on camera, but you never know.
No, it's good.
Maybe it'll be good.
Just the raw Zoll. I like it.
That's right.
The raw Zoll.
The raw Zoll.
There's the podcast name.
Yeah.
There you go.
New segment. Like, it's like the grind my gears. Just like, and now the raw
The
Zoll.
raw Zoll.
How do you feel about Indiana, Zoll?
Love it.
That's still in beta. All right. Jeff, how you doing this week?
I'm okay, David.
Oh, no. A sullen Jeff.
You weren't there, so you didn't know. But we lost our softball game by one single run last night.
Oh, well, that's better than the previous night.
Well,
It was
it's
better
just
than the previous
feels like
night.
losing by one run. It's kind of rough. But again, you weren't there, so it's not your fault.
It's not my fault. And you know what? All the plans that I had to reorganize my life for fell through. So it was great. It was really good.
Everybody got what they wanted.
Yeah. So instead of playing softball with my friends and colleagues, I got to mow the lawn. Just because it would have been like the second week in a row where I said I couldn't make it. We planned around that, finding subs. And then I like showed up at the last minute. Just like, hey, guess what? Everything fell through.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. It's good that we're both over what happened to us yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you the
fine.
last out?
No, we had a guy on third, though.
Oh, no. More on that later.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Well, I was sorry to miss the podcast on Monday just because like topics like the end of partially the end of Blu-ray, like when some sort of physical media goes by the wayside and I'm not there, and then urine water. Yeah.
Dune suit.
It was a good episode though. And thank you to Ben Munson for filling in. So I thought it was great. All right. Well, before we jump into our first story this week, we have a word from our old friends at Oil Eater.
Oil Eater's household cleaners, industrial cleaners, and industrial equipment are specifically designed to replace dangerous solvents and are used throughout the world. Our safe water-based formula dissolves grease and grime for almost any surface and leaves a fresh, non-chemical scent. Our ultra-concentrated formulas are perfect for light, medium, or heavy cleaning and can be used on shop floors, in parts washers, to clean equipment, and more. VOC compliant, Oil Eater will do an excellent job in a multitude of applications, safely and cost-effectively, while reducing your chemical usage. Safe for the user, safe for the surfaces being cleaned, and safe for the environment. For more information, visit oileater.com or call 800-528-0334.
Hey, we're back. This week's episode, as I said, is sponsored by Oil Eater. Oil Eater cleaners and heavy-duty degreaser were specifically designed to replace dangerous solvents and are used by industries throughout the world. The company's ultra-concentrated formulas are perfect for light, medium, or heavy cleaning and can be used with parts washers, shop floors, equipment, and more. For a free sample, visit in.com/Oil Eater and let them know that Today in Manufacturing podcast sent you. All right, our first story this week. Canada goes submarine shopping to secure shipping's future. Canada is shopping for defense manufacturing partners. The country's Department of National Defense wants to significantly expand its submarine fleet to secure future shipping routes. Canada wants to make a dozen subs, which would quadruple the country's current fleet. It's kind of getting outdated and costly to maintain. The agency wants new conventionally powered submarines that can travel under the ice. Canada's Defense Ministry will soon be meeting with manufacturers, which could include U.S.-based contractors like General Dynamics, Electric Boat, and Newport News Shipbuilding. Whichever company or companies win the contract will need to meet tough requirements for stealth, lethality, and Arctic deployability. Other than outdated equipment, Canada said one of the key reasons it is beefing up naval defense is global warming. The country's Arctic is warming at 4 times the global average and making a, quote, vast and sensitive region more accessible to foreign actors who have growing capabilities and regional military ambitions. By 2050, Canada believes the Arctic Ocean could become the most efficient shipping route between Europe and East Asia. According to the Arctic Institute, as ice melts and opens up new, faster shipping routes, the traditional cooperative region is becoming increasingly competitive, which could eventually lead to elevated geopolitical tensions. Andy, whenever I think of Canada, I certainly don't think about it as like the new key to shipping between Europe and East Asia. I thought that kind of blew my mind, just in terms of, we think of global warming and, all that. But I mean, I think really far down the list is, hey, bright side, new shipping lanes.
Always nice to be reminded of the vast and varied unintended consequences of, the planet melting.
Yeah.
That's always great.
Yeah.
Always an upper.
One for the pro column.
No, this appears to be a very smart and forward-thinking step by the Canadian government. But I thought it was also worth noting that by far the 3 largest submarine fleets are the U.S., China, and Russia, I believe, respectively. And those happen to also be operating in that region. So, yes, they're quadrupling their fleet, but that's still 16 compared to more than 50 for each of those countries. Ooh. And each of those countries, of course, are not well known for slowing down their military spending, and they're each overhauling their subfleets as well, because they have some obsolete vessels as well, and they're at various stages of doing that. I think China's lagging maybe a decade behind or so. So I read a report by a delightfully named think tank called the International Institute for Strategic Studies. That was the report that said they're all replacing their obsolete subs. So it's important for Canada to be thinking about this and operating in those channels, but you're still looking at a submarine fleet that pales in comparison to those countries, and you're probably still looking at some pretty heavy cooperation with the U.S., I would imagine.
Yeah, the IISS. That could get tricky. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you're right. Looking in the face of some of the competitors out there, I mean, I don't feel like they're just going to cap it at 50. You know what? That's enough.
No. Or at the very least, they're going to keep those numbers stable, but with more and more advanced subs.
Yeah, things the U.S., Chinese, and Russian militaries have never said. I think we're good.
We're good.
Jeff, what were your thoughts on all of a sudden this sort of new landscape opening up as the Arctic thaws?
It's interesting because, this story comes out at the same time I'm reading this book. Hampton Sides is a great author. If you ever get a chance to read any of his stuff, he's like a historical writer, takes these very specific events and dramatizes them a little bit. It's all based on real things, but he's a great storyteller. But anyway, what I'm reading right now is called Into the Kingdom of Ice. And it's about this expedition in the 1880s where the USS Jeannette was actually trying to find the North Pole. There's all these weird theories at this point in time about what's going on the Arctic, what happens up there. There was thoughts of an open ocean area or a warm Gulf Stream and all these other things. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because right where the ship basically gets frozen in for like 2 years, probably be pretty open right now, in terms of there's a lot of flows and still a lot of ice, but definitely would not encounter the same environment that he did in 1880. Mm-hmm. So kind of interesting in terms of the backdrop. Getting back to what Andy was talking.
No, is this a nonfiction book that you're reading?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is actually, I mean, if you Google the USS Jeannette, there's a big story behind it. It's actually very interesting.
I thought you said it was a novel, and I'm just like, what? that's nice. It sounds like a nice story.
No,
Okay.
it is. Yeah, actual.
It's
accounts.
history written with flair.
A little bit of flair.
Yeah.
All right. Right
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. So, getting back to what Andy was talking about, and we look at as far as the military powers there, number 4 on that list is North Korea. So, again, just kind of throw a little more instability into the mix. You can appreciate where Canada is coming from and wanting to be protective of these lanes. The other thing is, not only is this going to, with these new lanes opening up here, we're talking about reducing shipping times and potential shipping costs by as much as like 50%. So, the economic impact and the gains to be had are significant. That's not talking about potential fishing opportunities, which there's debate in terms of what melting ice does to the ocean and how that impacts marine life, but more water, potentially more fish. The other thing is we're looking at energy. With a lot of this becoming more easily accessible, they're talking about 100 billion barrels of oil and literally trillions of cubic feet of natural gas that may be available. So in addition to the supply chain benefits, there's commercial product, there's energy, there's all of these different interests. And when those interests come into competition, yeah, you can definitely escalate the military dynamics, especially when you're looking at, I would argue, 3 of those top 4 submarine fleets definitely being a bit unstable at times.
Yeah. Well, and just talking about that, so Bill Blair, Canada's Minister of National Defense, said that the competitors are seeking access, transportation routes, natural resources, critical minerals, energy sources, like you mentioned. You know, they're already exploring these waters, the sea floor, probing the country's infrastructure, collecting intelligence. He said specifically, Russian subs are more widely probing across the Atlantic, Arctic, and Pacific Oceans, and China is also rapidly expanding its underwater fleet. As Andy said, that was wild to me. I guess I understand wherever there's a resource we can use, there's money, and so there's going to be competitors for it.
I was more surprised that Canada did not have a larger submarine fleet. When you look at some of the other smaller countries, at least geographically smaller countries, and the fleets that they do have, I was surprised. I mean, once you get outside of those top 4, I think Japan is like number 5 at like 25 subs or whatever.
Yeah.
And it drops off from there. But you would have thought Canada would be a bit higher on that list. I guess that was surprising.
They don't have
to me.
they have a ton of coastline, obviously, but it's just that little strip of British Columbia and then, off the Atlantic provinces in Quebec. And so most of it's Arctic. So
Yeah, true.
But I guess it's maybe like because you don't see it. Like, you see an Air Force, you see ground troops, you see the Army. Like all of those numbers seem like very unnecessarily high to me. Just like, well, all right. Like whole war going on underwater and nobody knows anything about what's going on. All right. Our next most popular story, the sonic impact of converting power plants to Bitcoin mining facilities. About 3 years ago, the Wall Street Journal revealed that multiple power plants were being repurposed for mining Bitcoin. As fossil fuel plants shut down, Bitcoin mining gave the facilities a new lease on life, and a lucrative one at that. According to Bitcoin Magazine, Bitcoin mining generated more than $2 billion in transaction fees and block rewards last March. Where there is money, there is interest. And as of February 2024, there are now around 137 facilities in the United States mining cryptocurrency. But at what cost? A new report from Time tells the story of a Bitcoin mine in Granbury, Texas, where residents say they are being tormented. More than 40 people in the area claim their medical ailments are linked to the constant sound produced by the mine. They are suffering from heart palpitations, vertigo, migraines, and panic attacks, among others. The site originally had 163 squat metal boxes that contained more than 30,000 computers, which started running 2 years ago. Energy company Marathon currently operates the mine, and it takes a lot of juice to do it, like 91 terawatt hours of electricity per year, just like that. Retrim and retrim never happened. As a result, the facility uses thousands of fans to cool these machines. Those fans are the source of the noise. Time says the facility has turned on more machines over the years, and the noise now reaches 91 decibels, about the same as a lawnmower, subway, or motorcycle passing by. OSHA requires ear protection for people working in environments that average at least 85 decibels of noise for just 8 hours. Marathon does say that by the end of the year, 50% of the site's air-cooled containers will switch to immersion cooling, a method that involves submerging components in liquid. Andy, even Texas deems noise unreasonable once it exceeds 85 decibels. And if you're breaking regulations in Texas, my goodness, you're doing a little bit wrong.
You're probably breaking them everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's impossible to say for sure whether these individuals' ailments were entirely caused by this mining operation specifically, but the science of how noise can impact your health, that's pretty crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
You can go into, I'm sure, any number of documentation that you want to, but the EPA, just for brevity here, they have a section on noise pollution, and their quote is, "Research has shown that exposure to constant or high levels of noise can cause countless adverse health effects." And they list, beyond hearing loss, they also list, sleep disruption, which has, of course, its own health issue or consequences, speech interference, high blood pressure, and stress-related illness. So none of what these people are describing is out of the realm of possibility for this at all, at 91 decibels constantly. Mm-hmm. I'm at the point now where my old man takes are becoming increasingly age appropriate.
Okay.
But one of mine that I really have no evidence for is that cryptocurrency entirely is a scam. So,
okay.
I mean, if and I have a feeling it might just be a net benefit for everybody if it went away.
Yeah.
So, I am deeply sympathetic to these people.
No, I understand. And it's one thing that stood out to me too is, so Marathon comes out and they're like, no, 50% of it is likely going to be dampened, right? But it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Jeff, as they were turning on these sites, there's 163 containers. They've added more, and each container has 30,000 computers in it. They've all with fans blasting them, and they've added more over the years. I mean, they had to know. It's not like the silent killer, right? You fire these up and you're just like, what? No, that should probably be fine. Like it seems ridiculous to me that there wasn't. At least I can understand if this was an unexpected consequence, but I feel like it should have taken less than 2 years to find some sort of remedy.
Come on. You fire up any computer, it makes noise, especially because if it has a fan in it. I mean, to think that it's going to be that volume, of course, this is an issue. And whether you can tie it directly to any of these health concerns or not, it's ridiculous. Yeah. No one should have to deal with the equivalent of a lawnmower in their ear all day.
Yeah,
it's preposterous. The same thing when you look at the amount, we just did a story about the ice cap melting. We're going to do another story about electric vehicles and their impact. Now we're looking at something like this that consumes 91 terawatt hours of electricity. That's like 3 million homes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I was doing some of the math.
That's like per, I think it's the New York Times or the New York Post that came out with that number.
Yeah.
So it's not just pulled out of nowhere. It's ridiculous the amount of energy that's being consumed here for crypto mining.
Yeah.
And the thing that blows me away here is the whole process or the whole thought process behind Bitcoin initially was this communal currency. Mm-hmm. We're getting banks out of here. We're getting big business out of the way so we can be more transparent in our financial transactions. It's me to you, man. It's not about everybody else getting involved. And now what has Bitcoin mining and cryptocurrency become? These huge corporations buying all of these empty facilities or actually leasing space when people build new utilities. Mm-hmm. They'll go in there at that time basically saying, hey, I tell you what, we want a slice. We'll pay for it. We'll have our own building right here so we're tapped directly into the energy source so that we're that much quicker and that much more efficient because it's become so ridiculously competitive in mining for all this cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
This whole thing is just blowing up to a point where somebody needs to step in and say, enough. We cannot have grid infrastructure issues like we have and allow this type of business to continue on for, again, like Andy was alluding to, I'm with him there. Okay. Yeah. Like, I can't prove it's baloney, but it sure feels like the same thing as me, trading baseball cards when I was a kid.
Yeah.
What value do you see in this Robin Yount rookie card?
Yeah.
Well,
a lot.
Well, it's like any currency, but one is backed by Federal Reserve and the other is just out here in the
One
Wild
you can
West.
buy milk with and the other you have to try to go to Tesla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. I didn't want to just like immediately agree with you as well. This like shadow currency that I don't believe is real and really just more of a headache. I understand when things like this come out and it's sort of like a novelty that's traded amongst people. You know, it has like sort of a novel value to it. But yeah, the fact that an energy company is operating this site, pouring 91 terawatt hours of electricity into it every year, that's beyond for me. That is beyond. And I understand, like I've interviewed many people that say, no, the crypto, they don't even like the term cryptocurrency, but this currency is the way of the future. But I personally don't.
But who's going to control it?
I don't
At this
see it.
point, it's not going to get to a point where you and I are dealing with this because it's going to be controlled by all these utility companies, essentially.
Yeah.
So the way that this is morphed is just the exact opposite of the way it was, the guiding principles behind its origins. It's just ridiculous.
Well, in dipping a little bit more into the math of it, you know, I wanted to know what you could do with 1 terawatt hour of electricity. So I looked at Duke Energy, which says that is enough power to cool 500,000 homes for a full year. This is according to Duke Energy, 1 terawatt hour. You can light over 1 million homes per year. You can fully power 70,000 homes per year with just 1 terawatt hour of electricity. That's incredible. According to the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, a person can only be exposed to 91 decibels for a maximum of 2 hours per day. And we're talking about living your life there. Like, I mean, it's considered, officially, it is considered very loud and dangerous to hearing. So, I mean, what's the solution? Like, you're just always wearing earplugs and earmuffs?
Short of actually like having regulations and enforcing them, I suppose.
Well,
or moving.
Well, and
selling your house for pennies on the dollar.
Right? Like, I mean, and unlike other times that we've talked about, like noise pollution in particular, as a result of new factories or other industrial property, we talk about like they create jobs, they create tax revenue.
There's some benefit.
But like this is like these are lights out facilities. There are no jobs. Like maybe 3 guards that they have. I mean, maybe like some sort of maintenance staff in case one of the hundreds of thousands of fans go down.
Gotta fix 1 fan.
Yeah. Maybe some tax revenue. According to Bitwave, the market value of the mined coins at the time of the receipt is treated as income. So they do have to pay some sort of tax, or when the mined coins are sold or disposed of at a later date, you have to pay capital gains or capital losses. So you do have to pay some taxes on this, but otherwise this is just like a hole, you know, like, I mean, do you see any benefit to the local community for something like this, Jeff?
No. That's why the energy Department of Energy or somebody along those lines needs to step in here. There needs to be something done to curb all of this mining and the energy, the ridiculous level of energy that it's consuming. Either they need to have their own sort of microgrid set up, some sort of renewable energy source, whatever the case may be. They can't be sucking this much out of a grid that's already highly challenged.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It also made me think of like, okay, what are the loudest and the quietest places to work? So any thoughts on the quietest place to work?
Library.
Absolutely. You know, hearing the word library just brought me a little bit of peace. Just like, but where is the loudest place to work?
Airport.
Yeah, the airport ground crew.
Feels like sometime it's
those are right.
This newsroom.
Oh yeah, no, those are right. No, only during a hot topic. Like only when we're putting together the top 5 rundown for the podcast, and then it's just like, well, let me tell you my 2 cents.
Here's why you're. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. If I didn't confirm those, yes, library is the quietest and the airport is the loudest, but specifically the airport ground crew. Shout out to Ground Sport magazine out there. Just a little piece
the guys
of my
with
past.
the enormous ear protection on at all times. Those guys. Yeah.
And, you know, I spent about a year working in that industry, covering that industry, and you get out there and it is incredibly loud. Incredibly
How
loud.
hot is it?
It's incredibly loud, incredibly hot, incredibly dirty, just because like of all the fumes. And I mean, on top of it, you know, the flop sweat, but it is a brutal, it's a brutal job. But I mean, you get to play with a couple of cool toys, like those little tugs, essentially the like hybrid tractor lawnmower things that are pulling around planes.
Yep.
Those are kind of fun.
Okay.
You know, you get going a little hot in one of those baggage handlers. Not bad. All right. Our next most popular story. White House awards $1.7 billion to boost electric vehicle manufacturing and assembly in 8 states. The Biden administration last week announced nearly $2 billion in grants to help restart or expand electric vehicle manufacturing and assembly sites in the U.S. The plants are owned by GM, Fiat Chrysler, Volvo, and other car makers in 8 different states, including Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, and Virginia. In a statement, President Joe Biden said this should be a win-win for union auto workers and automakers and create thousands of good-paying union manufacturing jobs. The grants are paid for by the 2022 climate law, and if they are completed as planned, the projects would create more than 2,900 jobs and retain some 15,000 union workers. So, who's getting what and why? A couple. Bluebird Body Company is going to receive $80 million to convert a Georgia site previously used to make diesel-powered motorhomes and start making electric school buses. Fiat Chrysler is going to get $335 million to convert an idled assembly plant in Illinois to assemble EVs, and another $250 million to convert an Indiana transmission plant to make electric drive modules for EVs. General Motors is going to receive $500 million to convert an assembly plant in Lansing, Michigan to produce EVs. Harley-Davidson is going to receive $89 million to expand a facility in York, Pennsylvania to make electric motorcycles. And Volvo Group is going to receive $208 million to upgrade 3 manufacturing facilities that supply and build Mack and Volvo branded heavy-duty trucks. Jeff, we've covered the EV manufacturing industry a lot, and it seems like we've definitely been in a bit of a lull when it comes to EV manufacturing. Do you think we need another $2 billion to help prop up the industry and maybe retool some of these manufacturing facilities in order to kind of keep the steam going, keep the momentum?
We need the boost, but it's going in the wrong place.
Okay.
So
how so?
Because, well, let me ask you this. When we look at the individuals, the stakeholders, the players in the EV environment, how do the regulators, the legislators, the EPA folks, Department of Energy, CARB, all of those folks, are they for EVs? Are they in on electric vehicles? Would you say they are?
Yeah.
Okay. Andy, would you say the vehicle makers, the OEs, the parts suppliers, all those folks, are they in on EVs?
They sure seem to be.
Okay. So we're missing one thing here, right? Mm-hmm. The people buying the vehicles. Okay. Yeah. So when we look at this list of stuff, I love the Bluebird thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. Getting in electric school buses, because that is going to help this whole notion of, can we trust electric vehicles? If you're going to put your kids on a school bus that's electric, I think that goes a long way in instilling purchasing confidence in parents who are the ones that are going to maybe buy electric vehicles at some point.
No, there's some truth to that, because all of the buses in our town, in Madison, I think run on propane, right? In propane and electric.
Couldn't tell you.
And
I hope so.
Yeah, like whenever I saw those signs, I was just like, it did give me like a sense of comfort knowing that, okay, this bus with a large portion of our community run by it made me trust the technology a little more. You're right.
I like that one.
Yeah,
I like that one. The Volvo Group getting in $208 million for these heavy-duty trucks. I like that one. We're talking about logistics, supply chain. Again, something that's going to be a corporate purchase, and getting those folks on board. In both of these environments, we can reinforce the reliability of the technology. We can make these advancements. We can improve the range and get rid of some of that anxiety that emanates from that in the consumer, the ones that are going to be buying vehicles. We've got OEs making more electric vehicles than they can sell.
Yeah.
Why are we giving them money?
Yeah.
The money should be going to incentivize consumers. Okay. The money should be going to you and me saying, hey, man, you're probably going to be looking at a car in the next 3 to 5 years. Why don't you go test drive this electric vehicle? We're going to give you this vehicle for 3 months.
Yeah.
No car payment for 3 months. We're going to freeze that other payment you're making.
Yeah.
Just try it out. And if you like it, I bet GM or Fiat or any of these folks, they'll make you a deal to buy this electric vehicle.
Yeah.
That's where we need the boost.
Yeah.
We don't need the boost in the people making it. They'll figure that out. Okay. They've got their plans. They've been talking about it for the last 5 years. Giving them more money at this point is not a good investment, in my opinion. Okay.
Yeah.
When you're looking at, again, Fiat, I'm assuming this is that Belvedere facility.
Yeah.
That we just will, we're not going to let that die.
Yeah.
Nothing against the workers there, but at some point it's written on the wall, isn't it? This is not meant to be, but we're going to keep plugging some money in there. So I don't like it for those reasons. And this just feels like a very obvious politically positioned move. Okay, this is coming right up. This is making sure that Biden doesn't lose any of those UAW union people, any of the environmental folks. And for those two reasons, I just don't like it. I don't like the timing, and I don't like the targets.
Yeah, I guess I have to say, I thought you do raise a really good point in terms of you could incentivize it way more for the consumer and really do a bit more good than they currently are. Just because the tax credits are there, but if you can always make it easier on the consumer, you're going to
tax
help
credits are
adoption.
getting lower and lower, though.
Yeah.
As they sell more of these vehicles, those things are going away.
Yeah.
So just make it a more direct-to-consumer type situation. That's
Yeah.
how, and then you're going to, through the whole natural way of our economy works, and give these companies the funds they need to start tooling up these facilities correctly.
So I was curious because, it did seem like they didn't necessarily cherry pick, but, they couldn't talk about all the people who received grants in the news report. So I wanted to add a couple more before we jump in on the other side. Other notable projects included Cummins, and I was surprised that one didn't make the AP story. They're going to get $75 million and match another 75 of their own to convert a 360,000 square foot existing manufacturing facility in Columbus, Indiana, the Columbus Engine Plant, to house manufacturing for zero emission components and electric powertrain systems. Now, I wanted to bring some of these up, and I got a couple more, Jeff, just because it's not the car manufacturer. It's part of the supply chain that we need to build up as well, right? So I thought maybe you might like this a little bit better. American Auto Parts, which is a subsidiary of Hyundai Mobis, which is the part and service arm of Hyundai Motor, they're going to get $32.6 million for a $65 million project to bring EV manufacturing and jobs to Toledo, Ohio. They're going to do a project in two different phases. One, they're going to convert a chassis assembly plant at the Stellantis Toledo Assembly Complex into a plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and ICE complete chassis assembly plant. They're also going to build a new battery system assembly plant in Toledo, at the Toledo Trade Center Industrial Park, the former site of the Northtown Square Mall. It's going to create 185 new jobs, make battery packs for PHEV SUVs, light trucks, and minivans. And the other company was ZF Axle Drives in Maryville. They're a subsidiary of ZF North America. They got $157 million to convert a portion of its Maryville, Michigan facility for internal combustion engine driveline component production to electric vehicle components. Does that make you feel any better that we're trying to make it easier to manufacture components specific for EVs and help alleviate some of the supply chain struggles?
Again, some of that stuff I liked. I mentioned the ones that I did.
Yeah.
Giving Harley $89 million for a project they've been working on for 15 years seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, the other part of that is just doing some quick math, and you're the math guy.
I mean,
so you can double check this.
Yeah.
But I believe about 1.1 of that $1.7 billion went to vehicle makers.
Yeah. No, agreed. I see, but
that's where I have a huge issue with this.
But I'm talking about the reasonable 0.6. But yeah, I mean, there's only 1.7. I understand you're a little upset about. But hey, Andy, that 0.6.
That's right.
That'll fix some problems.
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, we have all been at this long enough not to believe in coincidences. So I have no doubt there were political considerations in some of this. But if we're being fair, giving $500 million to GM in Michigan, that's where GM is. I know it's a contested state this fall, but that's where they are. So there's that angle too. And there's other sites here as well, Indiana, Maryland, others, Illinois, that are not in contention this fall at all. Those are baked in. Yeah. So it's not, there are considerations. It's not the entire picture. So as far as what else Jeff was talking about, I know we talked about making this an interesting podcast, but I'm completely in agreement that we should be incentivizing the consumer. These tax credits are going away. They should be getting bigger. Yeah. If you're going to pick winners and losers here, and they've just, this administration at least, and global policymakers in general have decided they should, because the Arctic is warming 4 times faster than it should be. If you're going to do that, at this point, it needs to be aimed at the consumer, because there's been well-publicized slowing of growth in EV purchasing, but it's still growing.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of cost, and it's a matter of ease of ownership, it feels like at this point. So if you mitigate those things through a couple different angles, it's hard not to see the demand would be there.
Yeah.
And there's a couple other things I just wanted to mention about this. Besides the climate angle, the West in general is making a concerted effort to try and combat China's EV industry, which I believe was mentioned in the article as well. They're making good, cheap EVs, and they're trying to basically keep them out of the market because there are certainly economic concerns and probably national security concerns as well if they come to dominate the market. So, I mean, if they've decided on a security basis, on a climate basis, that this is the direction we should be going, there's probably a better way to go about this, but we'll have to see.
I agree that I think is part of the consideration as well, but put that right up top. Just be like, hey, we see the flood of Chinese EVs at the gates, and this is what we need. We need this influx of cash to even compete with it.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff, do you think that messaging, would that help you feel a little better?
No, because they're still not hitting the problem.
Probably wouldn't
the
make the
problem
UAW
isn't
feel
making
better.
the vehicles. The problem isn't even the price. Well, the price is a little bit of an issue, but the bigger issue is people just don't have confidence in the electric vehicle right now. They're very happy with what they have, and we're also a victim sort of our own circumstances because these internal combustion engine vehicles, they're lasting longer and they're more fuel efficient. And you know, we're ride sharing and working from home more than we have in the past. So the miles don't build up as quickly. So the vehicle turnover rate is not as great.
Yeah.
But in the same vein, if you went to a lot of these companies with big vehicle fleets and started giving them incentives to buy more EVs, there's other ways to do this, is my point. We could go on and on about it. As far as the Chinese EVs, that's a fair concern, but I don't think we're there. We're there yet. It could build. It's something to be ready for. I agree. But right now, the EVs that China is pushing out at that low price point, like 10 to 15 grand, I don't think a lot of American consumers are going to gravitate towards them. They're smaller. There's some
probably a trust issue there.
Stuff going on there. How are you going to get them repaired, serviced, all that? I understand it's definitely not something to ignore, but it's not. They're not pounding on the door yet.
But to your same argument, like you could also use those incentives to bring it down closer to that price point for the consumer. So, I mean, in one way, they're giving the manufacturer the ability to make them cheaper.
Not to that point, but better on a cost basis than your gas car.
Yeah. Well, and you know, just anecdotally from people that I know that have purchased EVs recently, one of the biggest issues is trying to get that power source in your garage or in your home or around your home where you can really charge the EV.
Okay, so again, not something associated to making the car.
That's what I'm trying to support your argument, Jeff.
You're going all the way around. Okay, I get
No.
it. You're
I'm
arguing
touching lots of
every
bases.
single side.
Yes,
all right.
every point.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying that from the consumer's perspective. I mean, because I was going to talk about not just, it's not just the cost that's the real issue with that. It's having the people who know how to do it. Yeah. So when it came to like, you know, workforce training, stuff like that, I know that people that are booked months out before they get, you know, they're still just have an extension cord from their house plugged into their car, trickle charging it just because they can't get anyone in the door to put it in. So I'm just saying training could also be a consideration for these funds.
I agree with you.
Yeah, right. All right. See?
How much higher could your voice get?
Not much. All right. Our next most popular story. Startups are creating robot army to fight Russia. Ukraine is looking for a strategic edge against Russia. In May, the country created a fourth branch of its military, the Unmanned Systems Forces. According to the AP, an ecosystem of labs and hundreds of secret workshops is trying to create a robot army that Ukraine hopes will kill Russian troops and save its own wounded soldiers and civilians. About 250 defense startups across the country are creating killing machines at secret locations that reportedly look kind of like rural car repair shops. Employees at one startup are making a $35,000 unmanned ground vehicle called the Odyssey. The country is kind of trying to peel away from the Western military-industrial complex and using and building new no-frills unmanned air, ground, and marine vehicles. Engineers at these startups take inspiration from articles in defense magazines or online videos to make cheaper platforms with the idea that weapons or smart components can be added later. Other projects include a motorized exoskeleton that boosts soldier strength and carrier vehicles to transport a soldier's equipment and help them up inclines. Also, cheaper drones. Jeff, what do you think of Ukraine's new strategy and this idea of like essentially 25 different innovation startups / engineering cells making low-cost equipment that can be weaponized later?
I think it's less, to me, this was less of a technology story and more of just a human spirit story, to be honest. You know, the what's the old quote, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing here. And everything we've seen come out of Ukraine in terms of the spirit of these people and the undying loyalty they have to their country and to their fellow citizens is really inspiring. And I think this just goes to that next level. One of the reasons Putin wants Ukraine is because there is all of this industrious ingenuity there, in addition to all the farming resources and everything else. But that's what really captured my attention. And I also saw a headline before we were coming in here. I didn't get a chance to look at the story, but now Russia is actually saying they're open to negotiations with Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
And you would think I get it.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
It's something.
Sorry.
For
Did I
those
say something there?
For
sir?
those listening at home and not watching, Andy's eyes rolled all the way back
Did a little,
to his head and
did a little
came forward.
smirk thing. Yes.
So the point being, Ukraine continues to fight. They have regained a lot of territory. They're sort of in a stalemate now with a much larger, heavily resourced country. So you can appreciate where they're coming from in trying to do it themselves. Do a lot of DIY type military equipment here, and it's pretty amazing that what they've been able to accomplish. And I know this leads into a bigger conversation about artificial intelligence and robotics on the battlefield, and I feel like it's important to make a distinction there. Robotics and artificial intelligence, while in some instances go hand in hand, it's not always the case, okay? If you look at a sort of a parallel on a industrial setting, you know, these robots that they're developing there, it's almost like a robotic arm, if you will. They're still controlled. There's not a lot of thinking involved. It's just an autonomous vehicle that can go out, either deliver supplies, provide medical aid, whatever the case may be. It also got me thinking here, according to IBM, again, just remembering not to get too panicked whenever we start talking about AI, they talk about AI in 4 different function-related AI categories. Okay. The first one they talk about is a reactive machine AI. This is basically like that robotic arm that can pick up widget A and put it in box B in a repetitive nature because it was taught to do that, essentially. It's programmed. The other one being limited memory AI. This is more the traditional industrial machine learning where it can say, not only am I going to put that widget A in box B, I also know that this round peg will not fit in a square hole.
Yeah.
Or the red one won't go next to the green one, whatever the case might be. The other 2 that they get into here are things that we still are not there yet. We talk about theory of mind AI or self-aware AI. This is where we get scared, right? This is the frightening stuff. We're nowhere near that yet, okay? They're not thinking for themselves, and neither is a lot of this stuff. So I think it's just when we talk about these military applications, when we talk about artificial intelligence and robotics, yes, kind of like talking about the Chinese EVs coming into the U.S., do we want to pay attention to it? Absolutely. We don't want it to get out of control. We're so far away from it, though. We're not there yet.
We're not so far away from it. We're far away from it.
We are so far away from it, man.
I think we're much closer than you think.
ChatGPT depends on other people telling it stuff.
Which is scary because where's it getting that information? Did any part of this stand out to you though, where there are a bunch of these teams essentially in mechanic shops reading Popular Mechanics and watching YouTube, and they're like, I should be able to make a drone.
Well, what's impressed me through this whole war is how Ukraine has been able to communicate so well with its citizens in terms of sharing information. And in this case, they're sharing a lot of this data that they can use to train themselves and teach themselves on how to build this stuff and also how to upgrade it constantly. I mean, they've got different programs in place to allow not only the dissemination of this information, but then also to teach the people that are being taught to teach other people to do it. And that only comes from a will and determination that's just awesome to see.
A lot of strong original Iron Man vibes.
Absolutely.
Andy, in one of the quotes, they were talking to one of the owners of one of these startups. And he said, "We are fighting a huge country and they don't have any resource limits. We understand that we cannot spend a lot of human lives. War is mathematics." I thought that was a unique outlook on the realities they're facing and how they plan to. We often talk about how the spirit of the United States is to innovate itself out of a problem. And really, we're seeing that similar mentality coming out of the Ukraine?
I mean, it's a matter of will at this point from Ukraine, from Russia specifically, how much are they willing to endure, and from the West as well. You mentioned a little bit how they want to get less dependent on the West because it seems like the West's attention to that might be a little shaky from time to time. Yeah, my first thought reading this story was the thinking at the time when Russia invaded almost 2.5 years ago, I think, was this will be over fast. And now almost immediately was like, how did Russia think these people would be conquered? Like, what were they like? So, what it also made me thought of is a story I saw, I think earlier this week, retired Army General Mark Milley, who's the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was at an event and he said that he thinks robots and other autonomous systems, which Jeff talked about a little bit, but he thinks that would amount to robotics specifically would amount to about 1/3 of the U.S. military in the next 10 to 15 years. So that's
soon, man.
That's not what we're talking about here, but made me think of it. What we are talking about here that I also thought
that was so well done,
I get
Andy.
it. Yeah.
Thank you for setting it up.
I get it. And I'm glad you mentioned it because I hadn't thought of it that way. So just trying to, yes, we should have just fought it out and made it more interesting content.
Yeah. Here's a fact. Just think about it for a minute.
One thing I did think of, though, is that if these can be made with publicly available information and generally speaking on the cheap, if that proliferates elsewhere throughout the world, could be much more dangerous for U.S. personnel, our allies, in whatever fields they might be operating in. So that's certainly something to watch for, too.
Yeah,
no, that's a fair point.
Hundreds of thousands of chappies out there just hanging out, slugging it out. I wanted to pay attention to the description of one of these particular sites, just because it put a little bit more context as to what they're working in. The site was partitioned into small rooms, some for welding, some for body work. That includes making fiberglass cargo beds, spray painting the vehicles gun green, and fitting basic electronics, battery-powered engines, off-the-shelf cameras, and thermal sensors. It seems like almost seems a little post-apocalyptic to me. I'm imagining like this team of like 5 engineers that find an old Radio Shack and start making tanks. You know, it's wild.
It can feel very dystopian, yeah.
I don't know. It sounded like work cells to me. It sounded like a manufacturing facility.
That's true. I mean, yes. Rudimentary. Yeah.
But that's how you get, but that's, you work with what you have. And
Yeah.
you become organized with what you have. And as they continue to get more success, it's going to build and become more and more. I think that, I hate to keep going back to this, but like Andy alluded to too, like that is just the spirit of these people. Like this is just how they roll. I mean,
Yeah.
getting back to being so underestimated to a point of kind of being ridiculous at this point.
Well, and just piggybacking off of the idea that, once this information gets out there and is publicly available, who else has access to it? They're also working on semi-autonomous attack drones and counter-drone weapons that have AI on board. And this combination of low-cost weapons and AI tools is like freaking out a lot of experts just because, robots is a different level, right?
Yeah.
That's like, but when we're talking about like low-cost drones, there's not a lot of components on there.
And Ukraine's a unique situation that's not going to take hold everywhere, but it could down the road. Something,
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Once it's out on GitHub, everyone's got one. All right. Our most popular story this week. OSHA finds flooring manufacturer required workers to stand on forklift tines. A recent Department of Labor investigation found that flooring and surfaces manufacturer Ecor International committed more than a dozen health and safety violations at its plant in Mejia, Texas. The department told IEN that the investigation was triggered by a complaint that mentioned, quote, hazards associated with fire, electrical, egress, and powered industrial vehicles. So, last January, OSHA inspectors made a visit and found that Ecor found workers or forced workers to climb forklifts and stand on the machine's elevated tines to access work areas and let untrained employees operate the forklifts. Other violations were uncovered, like failing to provide a safe area for welding, not ensuring machines had the necessary safety guards, and neglecting flammable dust buildup. The investigation resulted in citations for 15 serious and 1 willful violation and nearly $300,000 in proposed penalties. Additionally, a separate inspection at an E-Corps site in Ozark, Alabama, conducted 4 months after the Mejia investigation, uncovered similar machine guarding hazards as well as risks for amputation and electrocution. E-Corps serves customers in more than 75 countries across multiple industries, including sports and fitness, education, retail, healthcare. The company makes recycled rubber for outdoor playground surfaces and shock pads and sheet vinyl that you find in fitness rooms, like the gym. E-Corps stresses the safety and environmental benefits of its products. Jeff, too bad that doesn't extend to the worker.
So I have to admit, when I looked at this story, the first thing that went through my head is, I've done that. Like, I've been on the forklift, getting lifted up to do that. I mean, in 2 different jobs I had in college. I mean, not saying it's a good idea, but I think what it reminded me of is, and then it went on to talk about all those other things that happened at that facility. I think Andy's going to get into that a little bit. Those situations happen and all these things escalate because some of those basic things are allowed to happen. At least that was my experience in both of those locations. We let that go. Okay, it was just, I'm just got to get this one thing, just lift me up there quick and I'll grab it and we can go. And then it gets to, well, that's not a big deal, so neither is this. Oh, that's maybe some stuff we shouldn't, put next to the heater, but it'll be fine. It just perpetuates and it goes on and on like that. And we've always talked about how safety is a culture issue. That's how it starts.
Oh, yeah.
One, you always roll your eye, or anybody else does, when I talk about the blocking and tackling. Yeah. But
I used to. No. Old David used to roll his eyes. Then I aged about 10 years and I'm like, damn, it's the foundation of everything that works.
And that's where it comes in with safety here too, the little stuff. Yeah. And reinforcing it right from the get-go so that things don't perpetuate and expand and get out of control to the point where we are talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. Yeah. And more importantly, all those workers doing really unsafe stuff.
Well, and maybe it was 20 years ago. But when we talk about a culture issue, a lot of times it seems to be specific to a management team at one facility.
Agreed.
But talk about a culture issue that is likely throughout the entire operation, especially if you're finding this, in Alabama, like at an entirely different states. Then that's where you really need to dig in at any site they have and just be like, okay, there is clearly a lack of safety training and accountability at this facility. This was actually the first type of story that I ever heard about my father-in-law, or at the time future to be father-in-law. When I was being introduced to him, like at that time, he was working on this huge facility that they were building at the manufacturing facility. And they needed to fix some stuff in the trusses. And so he just had a forklift bring him up and then bring him up there. And he fixed it without any sort of fall protection. And he got reprimanded. He had to go home. He was suspended for a few days. And he's like, what's the big deal? They're like, you're the head of the safety and maintenance team. You can't do that. He's like, no, everybody knows you can't do that. It's like, yes, you can tell them that. But if then you go and do it, they're going to think it's okay. Andy, as Jeff kind of mentioned, there were a number of other violations that they found that were a little, let's just say, they caught the eye.
There were. It's interesting that was the first thing you thought of when you read it, because I think the first thing I thought of when I read it, being 41 now, is that's my nightmare. But it's the importance of having not only a safety culture in place at the shop or the factory or wherever, but these regulations in place. Because if I was 21, maybe I jump up there. Who knows? Doesn't seem like something I would do, but maybe I would have. I don't know. No, so that's obviously the lead in this story is the image of these workers perched on these tines high above doing whatever they're doing. My favorite personally was they were cited for the direct quote was failed to prevent small fires fueled by combustible dust, which I mean, I was more surprised that this investigation stemmed from just a complaint and not a severe injury or fatality.
Yeah. Honestly, they got lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. And credit to Nolan for following that up, just because this was normally OSHA does a really good job with these press releases in kind of painting the picture for you as to why they were there in the first place.
Well, when there's an injury, you hear about it.
Yeah.
They're very clear about what happened when that
and so it was odd. It was just like, yeah, we were there for an investigation. It's like, well, why? You know, like, you know, I mean, even if they just would have said that, like, I mean, I think one of the most crucial parts of the story was the part that Nolan got out from OSHA saying that, you know, they received a complaint that said there are hazards associated with fire, electrical egress, and powered industrial vehicles. You know, it just really also emphasizes the point that you do have, no matter where you are on the hierarchy at a company, you do have the ability to create change. And if you can't do it internally, you can reach out to OSHA and things will go into motion. You know, things could change. I don't know.
Permitted potentially explosive atmospheres to exist. That was the other good one.
Wow.
Potentially explosive atmospheres.
I mean, we talk about it all the time, how overlooked dust is. You know, just, I hear that one more time, prevented potentially explosive situation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where did I go? I'm scrolled off it. Permitted potentially explosive atmospheres to exist. Allowed their existence.
You can't do that.
Nope.
That's bad.
No gas giants.
No. I feel like that's like a really intense merit badge. All right. Well, before we jump into In Case You Missed It, or maybe something on like when you do your review, like, hey, you know what? This year, no small fires, no explosions.
There you go.
Good job.
We're building on it.
Your kite's in quadrant 4. Before we jump into In Case You Missed It, the stories that maybe weren't as popular on our website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from our friends at Oil Eater.
Oil Eater's household cleaners, industrial cleaners, and industrial equipment are specifically designed to replace dangerous solvents and are used throughout the world. Our safe water-based formula dissolves grease and grime for almost any surface and leaves a fresh, non-chemical scent. Our ultra-concentrated formulas are perfect for light, medium, or heavy cleaning and can be used on shop floors, in parts washers, to clean equipment, and more. VOC compliant, Oil Eater will do an excellent job in a multitude of applications, safely and cost-effectively, while reducing your chemical usage. Safe for the user, safe for the surfaces being cleaned, and safe for the environment. For more information, visit oileater.com or call 800-528-0334.
Hey, we're back, and this week's episode is sponsored by Oil Eater, and we're going to get into that read because it's an oldie but a goodie. Oil Eater cleaners and heavy-duty degreaser were specifically designed to replace dangerous solvents and are used by industries throughout the world. The company's ultra-concentrated formulas are perfect for light, medium, and heavy cleaning and can be used with parts washers, shop floors, equipment, and more. For a free sample, visit IEN.com/Oil Eater and let them know that the Today in Manufacturing podcast sent you. All right, in case you missed it, stories not as popular, still a potentially big impact on the industry going forward. Andy, what do you have for us this week?
A little less than a week ago, I have what looks like a press conference, basically. California officials were in San Francisco for a demonstration of the MV Sea Change, which is, quote, the world's first hydrogen-powered commercial passenger ferry.
Okay.
It's a 70-foot catamaran that will take up to 75 passengers starting tomorrow. So if you want to fly out, you can get on the maiden voyage.
All right.
Between Pier 41 and the San Francisco Ferry Terminal, which is basically, if you're familiar with the area, it's Fisherman's Wharf down to downtown, a little more than halfway down the Embarcadero. Temporarily, for the 6-month pilot program, it's also free. So you can get in on that.
Okay.
It can run for 16 hours and or 300 nautical miles between fueling, and like all hydrogen fuel vehicles, its only byproduct or emission is water. So ferries like this one would obviously, and what California officials are emphasizing, it would limit emissions in San Francisco in particular by adding more to the fleet. But it could, of course, have bigger implications for shipping overall. It's one of a number of sectors where batteries aren't really an option at this point. And it also accounts for, I think, 3% of global emissions and rising. So they're trying to combat those emissions levels over the coming decades. As it stands today, hydrogen typically requires the burning of carbon to make it, but there's hope that it'll eventually be, that process will be powered by renewable fuel, renewable energy, so it'll be completely clean. So anyway, the next time you're in San Francisco, you can stroll from the wharf or the Maritime Garden on down and then just take the guilt-free ferry back up.
Would you go on the maiden voyage of the guilt-free ferry?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just curious. You know, sometimes when it's
not going,
technology,
it's not, so like, I'm going to demonstrate with my hand, which is not good for the podcast as a or audio medium.
Okay.
But it's just, the San Francisco Peninsula, and it's just going down that. So you're still, it's not going across the bay,
Yeah.
So
no,
you can still see
no,
the Embarcadero.
No. It wasn't it wasn't so much like because of the sinking. It was because of the, it's a hydrogen power. And sometimes people hear hydrogen, they get a little leery.
I guess that. I don't know. I feel like hydrogen fuel, there's hydrogen, not a ton, but there's hydrogen cars and
Come
stuff.
a long way since the Hindenburg.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand that. I'm just saying the maiden voyage.
I would
That's all.
not
Maybe the
take-
second time.
Don't get so defensive.
I would not take the
weren't
Hindenburg
coming
2
at
miles down from the wharf.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Your voice is elevating. We weren't coming at you.
I'm not.
It's okay.
Okay, it's okay. All right. Well, Jeff, kind of to your point in the previous story, this is a really good example in terms of proving a new type of technology in something that can kind of get a lot of eyeballs on it and still have quite a bit of utility.
Absolutely. Perfect application, I think, to really test this something out. We're seeing more and more of these hydrogen projects, I guess you could call them.
Mm-hmm.
I think as Andy alluded to, the generation is still a concern. But the two things it has going for it, number one, it's in California. So it's got CARB, I'm sure, all over this in terms of making sure it's as clean as it can possibly be. So there's a benefit there. The other part is San Francisco, you would think at some point getting some wind turbines up and running to help power some of this hydrogen generation, if they can develop some sort of campus, if you will, and that's probably maybe phase 3 or 4. Okay.
Yeah.
Right now, let's just make sure it works on the boat.
Yeah.
But you could see how this is the type of thing that could lead to other stuff.
Oh,
it could be
Yep.
it could be a thing that leads to other things.
Oh, yep. All right. Well, in CARB, so what is CARB? I just looked it up, already lost it. The California Air Resources Board, in case you don't know about that. I feel like, that seems like one that, you're right, might be sticklers.
Yeah, they kind of see themselves as higher than the EPA, especially on the automotive side. Definitely have got some opinions there, but I'll not put them out there at this point.
Got a bit of a history. No, and I was just looking at it from an industrial design perspective. They didn't. It's not like we're not going too futuristic here, right? It's a ferry.
It's a boat.
It's a ferry. Yeah. But I do think it's cool. It's rare that I'm able to get to San Francisco anymore, just because I feel like so many industry events have fled the area because it's just not economically viable to be there. But hopefully recreationally I can get there.
Yeah.
Which is definitely possible.
It's not likely, but
Yeah. But just fly out for a couple of days.
just send an email to whatever your industry group of choice. Be like, have you considered San Francisco?
Yeah, I know you guys always do Anaheim, but can we do the Bay? No, I thought this is a really cool story, a really cool application. And do you guys feel like hydrogen power is like I don't want to say dark horse technology because it's out there in a lot of different applications, but emerging? Are we going to see more and more hydrogen power? Jeff?
I think there are perfect applications for it.
Yeah.
When it's generated on site, either as a byproduct or as part of the natural process of things, I think it's perfect for fleets. I think in situations like this, it can be very beneficial. We just need to get better at it.
Yeah.
Whether you want to say it's cleaner, more efficient, whatever the case is, we just need to get better at it. And the only way you get better at something is by continuing to do it. So do I think hydrogen is a way forward for automobiles? No, I don't. But I should say commercial automobiles, consumer automobiles.
Yeah, fleets, definitely.
Fleets, things like that, on campus, boats, even planes. I mean, there's some interesting stuff going on in aerospace right now.
If you're going to decarbonize those industries in particular, long haul stuff, that's pretty much your only option at this point.
I mean, it would be great if the second iteration of this, given that everything works well, would be the Lake Michigan ferry.
Yes.
I would love that.
Yes.
Just and it'd be much more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never taken it, but based off of what I've heard, that one could use an upgrade.
Yes. Famously, I think don't quote me, I think the Manitowoc one is particularly not environmentally friendly.
Yeah, and
it's one of the two.
It has a lot of patina.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Mine, in case you missed it this week, I chose a story. The FDA and FTC continue their joint effort to protect consumers from copycat THC food products. And I chose this story just because there are a lot of frustrating parts about it. The FDA and FTC on Tuesday issued warning letters to 5 different companies for illegally selling copycat food products that contain Delta 8 THC, not to be confused with Delta 9 THC. That's the one everyone's familiar with. And it's introducing them into the marketplace in violation of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, or the FD&C Act. The warning letters went out to Hippie Mood, Earthly Hemps, ShamrockShrooms.com, Mary Jane's Bakery, and Life Leaf Medical CBD Center. The FDA also issued a warning letter independently to a company known as Grow God for the same violations. The companies market products like Double Stuff Stonios, Trips Ahoy, and Slizzles, which is a Skittles ripoff. This is all part of a joint effort to take action against companies that are selling illegally copycat food products, and these in particular that contain Delta 8 THC. In July 2023, the 2 agencies worked together, warned another 6 companies for selling similar food products with packaging that can easily be confused by products or by foods sold by popular national brands. All 6 of those companies that they warned last year no longer have such products in stock. According to the FDA, inadequate and confusing labeling can result in children or unsuspecting adults consuming products due to their strong resemblance to popular snacks. I wanted to bring this up in case you missed it, because I can't believe this still happens. And I understand how, as a result in like lapses in regulation, things like this are allowed to happen. I just don't know how people do it on a moral basis. We've heard plenty of stories about kids getting into things similar to a Double Stuff Stonio. We've heard about bus drivers that have had fatal accidents with a busload of people because they were eating a snack they thought was just a normal snack, and it happened to contain like Delta 8 THC products. And just, as a consumer, how when there are these unregulated markets, specifically like Delta 8, a lot of these things really fly under the radar, and you got to be careful out there. And as a consumer,
it's just being too clever by half, right? Trying to sell a product and go on the wrong side of the ethical line there.
Yeah, it's so I just from January 2021 to December 2023, the FDA received more than 300 adverse event reports involving children and adults who consume these products. And a lot of them had to do with accidental ingestion. Jeff, I don't know if you had a chance to see this story, but it's incredible to me that, I understand these are like, when we're looking in the grand scheme of, big food and even big cannabis, these are all sort of the people that are underneath the radar, right? Yeah. And it's unfortunate when there are bad actors like this that are kind of staining a fledgling industry like the cannabis. That's really like a nascent industry that's trying its damnedest to get off the ground. And I think times like this or examples like this just set it back so much.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say these are probably startups, right? These are younger companies.
Or no, they're more like, small mom and pop shops.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's one of 3 things that happens here. And I think overwhelmingly it falls in the first 2 categories. Number 1, they're lazy. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's just easy. Like, why come up with an original idea when you can rip somebody else's off? Number 2, they didn't know. Maybe there was just, there is the potential for just general unawareness.
Just ignorance.
And just like, well, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Not thinking bigger picture, because they're growers, they're food processors, they're not business people, shall we say. So, and I think that is the overwhelming majority of situations like this that pop up. But this also comes, I'm watching the Uber series on Netflix, Super Pumped, where they talk about the fall of Uber. It's that dramatic, it's a reenactment. It's not a documentary. It's an actual drama series where they talk about what happened. And what comes out in terms of looking at Travis Kalanick, am I saying his name correctly?
I don't know.
Off the top of my head.
Travis Kalanick, and seeing some of these others on some of these guys who had these very successful startups, there's an element, I think, of being a sociopath where there is just not a connection or a care to other people. It is just, this is my product. This is my business. I'm going to crush it. I'm going to make millions. I'm going to change the world. get out of my way.
Yeah.
And I think one of those three things comes into play with a lot of these types of products where they get into trouble because they just couldn't get out of their own way for one of those reasons.
Yeah.
And I think, again, with these, I'm not going to say it's a Travis Kalanick type deal.
Yeah.
But I think that comes into play in a lot of cases too, where they just don't care how it affects people. They're not worried about the kids mistaking it for something else. They can rationalize it saying, that's up to the parents. That ain't my fault.
Well, and to me, the story is similar to, was it Jack Daniels that got really upset about the pet
dog
toys,
toys.
the dog toys, where that is like, a farce, where that's, it's a joke.
It's not a safety issue.
It's not a safety issue.
Yeah.
Where like, when you look at the packaging of like double stuffed Stonios, that's something that like,
the Trips Ahoy one threw me for a minute. I looked at it and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's I don't know. There is not a fine line between the two. Like one, in my opinion, should be allowed and is sort of like, I don't want to just say like in good fun. And then there is one that is like an inherent risk to the public. Yep. All right. Well, so stop it. All right. Jeff, what's your in case you missed it this week?
So I went back a little bit further just because, man, these podcasts have been backing up a little bit.
Yeah,
so went back and grabbed a story that I thought was really interesting. NASCAR unveiled its first electric race car. Now, this does go back about a week and a half, so this is a little bit older story. But I have always said if we ever want to get EVs really rolling in this country, give it to NASCAR.
Yeah.
Because not only is the technology on the cutting edge from an automotive perspective, it's got such a loyal and dedicated fan base that if they buy into EVs, we're off and running. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because the other thing, David, remember from Days of Thunder when Cole asked Harry, I don't got to worry about any car beating me out there.
Mm-hmm.
What did his crew chief tell him?
I don't know. All I'm thinking is if you're not rubbing, you're not racing. Or
there's nothing stock about a stock car.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's a lot of work that goes into making these vehicles more competitive and better. And when we look at the automotive sector, we've benefited from a lot of these advancements in racing. So if we've already got Formula E out there. If NASCAR is going to get behind this, I think that is another great push for electric vehicles. So the top, looking at the article here, it says the top motorsport series in North America partnered with Chevy, Ford, Toyota, and electrification company ABB to demonstrate a high-performance electric vehicle, engage fan interest in electric racing. They want to represent electric vehicles and more broadly electrification in racing as cool, fun, and accessible. The AP got a first look at the $1.5 million prototype. That sounds like a lot, but you're looking at stock cars going for about $1 million a race, so that's not ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's only had one driver, David Reagan. He is a former NASCAR driver. Right now, he doesn't have a sponsor, so he's semi-retired.
All right.
But he took it out and performed well around Chicago. So this is the first step. It's kind of a CUV-looking vehicle right now. It's got kind of a big fin on the back and stuff, so it's not probably ready for prime time yet. First step, prototype. I think this is a huge part of, again, getting past some of those objections that people have in terms of reliability. How can I trust the range? How can I trust the performance? And he talks about when he took this vehicle out on the track, the immediate boost. It's faster than a stock car because it's electric. You push the pedal, it's there immediately. It's like turning on a switch. It was a little slower in the corners because it's heavier.
Yeah.
But again, put it in a competitive environment, leave it to these engineers at NASCAR. They'll figure that out too.
If you don't have the ability to drive an electric car, one that a tool that gave me a really good understanding of the power of an electric device was an electric chainsaw. So you hit that button and she's flying right away. Yeah. And it's like, first of all, an amazing tool, but it's like a really good representation or example of the kind of power that you can generate with an electric drive.
And Reagan went on to say, like, you don't have the sounds that you do from an internal combustion vehicle. It's not as loud, the exhaust and the engine and everything else. But he said it actually provided more. He could still smell the tires burning. He could still get a better feel for a lot of other things in the vehicle because he wasn't deafened by all that noise.
Yeah.
So in essence, it could lead to a much more competitive racing, faster races, better driving, all that kind of stuff.
That's interesting in a completely different perspective in terms of what you can diagnose when you can hear.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear about those the shop whisperers all the time where they walk into a facility and they know, like, hey, you got something going on with that conveyor belt over there. It also made me think of, do you remember when we had the podcast listener, Lucas, email the podcast or reach out to the podcast? And he said that, a lot of engineers that he knows personally that are in school because he's in an engineering program. It's not that they wanted to work for Tesla or SpaceX, but they wanted to go into performance racing. And so I think stories like this are really inspiring to the future engineers out there that are like, okay, it's happening. Let's get an electric car and NASCAR. I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool. And Andy, what do you think? I mean, is this a potential source of inspiration for some of those future automotive engineers out there?
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, I should have done more homework apparently, but I was trying to do some cursory research. Do they have a range for how far these things can go? Can it go like a 400-mile
It's
race?
tough to do that right now.
I was going to say if they're going that fast, and
the variations in speed, depending on check the yellow flag, stuff like that. It's going to be tough to determine that because it's not just a straight distance.
I mean, if they can, like you alluded to that a little bit, the engineering advances from other high performance thing, if they can iron that out, I mean, that has obvious implications for every other electric vehicle out there.
Well, and think about the competitive cost for these teams, not having to buy fuel. Okay, they're not just putting unleaded gas into these stock cars too. I mean, if they don't have to worry about fuel, just plugging it in and bringing a couple extra batteries.
And tire technology. Like, because he said he could still smell those tires burning because there's a lot more weight on them. Tire tech's going to come a lot faster when you have these types of teams pushing the envelope in terms of what they need.
Yeah, and I was a little bit off of my stock car analogy. Traditional stock car, probably about $500,000 per race.
Okay.
So definitely more expensive, but again, prototype.
Yep.
My goodness. All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, let's jump into our final thoughts. Andy, again, thank you very much for joining us this week. We appreciate it. And Anna, hope you're able to dig your way out of that.
I'm going to fix that editing software if it kills me.
That print production hole. But keep your eyes peeled for newsstands for that newest edition of IEN Magazine coming out real soon.
And industrial distribution.
Which
is what I should be working on.
Oh, well, okay. So keep your eyes open for both industrial distribution and industrial equipment news, the print magazine. What is your final thought this week?
Well, it probably should have been also thanking Anna for doing the work that I should be doing while my tech issues percolate. But my actual one is, and I won't put you on the spot, you can answer off air, but I'm looking for movie recommendations because I'm flying solo this weekend. The wife is on a little trip with her work buddies, so
yeah,
it's me and the dogs.
I don't know. I know Twisters came out this week or recently, and I know Mitzi went and saw it.
Yeah,
and but he hasn't reported back, which makes me think it's not great. You seemed very excited.
I don't think you're going to be bored. It's probably, I wouldn't go into there with high expectations.
Yeah.
But
have you ever seen The Raid Redemption?
No.
That is so watch that.
Okay.
It's
Making a note here.
Yeah, it just randomly came up in the office, and Ben looked over at me when I'm like, "Oh, I don't know what The Raid is," and he was just like, "Go watch it." Because
leave your desk.
Yeah.
Leave your things.
It's one of those where I rented it from the library, and the movie was so fascinating that I then watched like another 2 hours of special features as to how they actually made the movie, just because the action in it is incredible.
Duly noted.
Yeah, it'll introduce you to a new type of martial arts.
Okay.
I think it's a South Korean movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you like a streaming guy, or you want to go to the theater, or what do you like?
I'm open to whatever.
That-
Usually streaming, but
that Uber series is actually pretty good.
Okay.
Jordan, what's his name? Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's Travis Kalanick.
Oh, I've seen the previews or whatever.
Yeah,
I do have
it's quite
Netflix.
good.
I should actually use
It's
it.
very good.
Well, and if you're gonna use it, I mean, have you seen the new Beverly Hills Cop movie?
I have not. I heard it's good.
Yeah, dude, it is solid. It was like one of those where the first time I watched it, because I've already watched it a couple of times, I was just like, please stay good. Please stay good. Don't Netflix this up.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, okay, they tried for the first quarter of a movie and now they know you got you.
Yep.
But yeah, straight through, I'm just like,
Okay.
and then you exhale and you're like, they did it.
They
got one. And then you see that they greenlit another one and you're like, maybe stop it.
Gotta print that money.
Yeah. My final thought this week was just this last weekend we were able to get up to the cottage and really get a chance to spend a lot of quality time with some close friends. And it's nice to just get out in the lake, let the kids play, and see the kids, like their minds work in terms of, here are fish, here's how we're going to try and trap them. Actually, one of my friend's kids like caught a fish in the world's tiniest net. It was like a net that you use to like
a butterfly.
fish,
I was gonna say like the aquarium one.
Yeah, like she held it up and she's like, I caught a fish, and I'm like, you didn't catch a fish, you got a leaf in there. And then she like actually caught a fish. They like got this 5-gallon bucket. I'm like, wow, not only are they more agile, like it was just a note of like how slow I've become.
Well,
but no, it was great just to. A lot of times it seems like we're always fighting for an hour or two to like get dinner with somebody or get lunch with somebody. And I don't know, it just was a good reminder of the value of like spending 2 days with close friends and just kind of really leaning in on the relationships a little bit. I don't know. It's highly recommend friendship. That's a tough one.
Bold statement, David.
Yeah. You know what you should do? You should go out there and get yourself some friends. The other was that I was out this week. I missed the podcast because I was out to a visit to Thief River Falls, and it was incredible. There will be more follow-up to that, but just as a little teaser of more to come, but blew my mind.
Well, you should let them know, where is Thief River Falls?
Thief River Falls is about 10 minutes away from the Canadian border, an hour away from Grand Forks, North Dakota. It's up there.
It's in Minnesota.
Minnesota. Yeah, it is all the way to the top. But an incredible community and an incredible story coming your way, hopefully next week. Now it's out there. It's got to go next week.
Teaser.
get yourself a deadline.
Yeah,
that'll make it happen.
Yep. Oh man, I got to start working on it like directly after this. Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
So last week we had kind of our company get together.
Yeah.
And those are always awesome. We have some people come in that we don't always get to see a lot on a day-to-day basis. And, kind of a common sense one, like you just kind of mentioned there, but it reinforced a lot of the decisions I think all of us have made over the years in terms of professional decisions. We all could have gone to different places. Maybe there was more money on the table, whatever like that. But putting a priority on who you're working with and what you're doing and the environment and all that stuff, it just continues to pay dividends in terms of my personal experience and enjoying what I do and the people that I work with and all that. So it's just kind of cool to take a second and just reflect on that, I guess, which I always kind of do at some point during those events, and it was just reinforced again. So it was cool.
We have a new hire, and hopefully he'll be introduced in the podcast at some point. But his response or his interpretation after the event was, it's just nice to work for a company and know they care about their employees. It was just like, that is like the best feedback you could ever get.
Your guys' final thoughts were a lot more uplifting than mine was.
No, go see The Raid, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, Sleeper on Netflix.
Okay.
It's a series, The Gentleman.
Okay. Oh,
really good.
I didn't mean to derail that conversation. It's very true. You should don't focus on financial things all the time.
Yeah.
Be happy. Focus on your happiness.
yeah, but about the movie.
Yes.
Very good. All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also give us you could help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to reach any of us, you can reach us at Jeff, David, or Andy at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Maybe send some programming notes to Andy for the weekend.
Yeah, there you go.
You can also reach Anna at in.com with come back to the podcast in the subject line. Subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletters, and make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. I think this is the first one of like getting back on track. I think from here on out, we're good to go.
Yep.
All right. For Jeff Ranke and Andy Zoll, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.